Welcome to the Fifth Estate. I'm Bob McKeown. If you think that organized crime in Canada is more fiction than fact, stick around. According to the RCMP, organized crime is a major problem in this country, even despite new laws intended to stop those groups that would prey on the rest of us. And as you will see, when we looked into the heart of Canada's criminal class, we found that for those willing to commit whatever ruthless acts are necessary and to pay the price in jail time, crime pays, and pays handsomely. Tonight, an exclusive and unusual rogues gallery of some of Canada's richest criminals.
We found bank accounts throughout the Cayman Islands. We found accounts in Mexico, in Eastern Europe. We found them in Cyprus. This organization was certainly churning tens of millions of dollars a year.
Gambling was a major activity. It's millions and millions. They pretty much had their hand into everything and anything that made money.
The father was a notorious gangster and drug trafficker.
Heroin's their blood. In the heroin trade, the Rizzutos were the key. Whoever controlled Montreal controlled the heroin franchise into the United States.
The son took over the family business and turned it into the most successful criminal enterprise in Canada.
And he certainly was, his father's son, a chip off the old block, and, rising to the top of the faction there in Montreal.
In fact, that father and son, Nick and Vito Rizzuto, live on the same block in Montreal, alongside other members of their extended family. The police call their street Mafia Row.
At one time, it was pretty much every house was owned by somebody who was very wealthy, drug trafficking, mafiosi. There was the Rizzutos, there were in-laws, and it was just this little street. It was all mafia.
We hear a lot of stuff about the mafia and tradition and family and but one thing we don't hear, business is business. Those guys, they're running a business. And if you interfere in their business, well, you're gonna die.
The remarkable rise of Vito Rizzuto is a little-known story, one that begins in the North American headquarters of organized crime, New York City. The setting is the grand old Pierre Hotel on Fifth Avenue. The occasion? A wedding reception given by an Italian godfather. It's the social event of the year for the infamous Bonanno crime family.
They are a cult, and it's a culture that you're born into. It's a life that begins the day that you are born, and there is no way out. What matters is the cult and the culture of mafia, and that's where they live.
The Bonannos have a branch plant in Canada, and some of their Canadian members are here tonight, including an ambitious young man, Vito Rizzuto. The Canadians are treated with respect. They're known as good earners for the family.
Every captain in the family has to kick in monthly to the boss. All the money goes up. The boss has coming into his chest, every month, millions and millions, because he gets a cut of everything.
The acting boss of the family is Joe Massino, renowned as a pathological killer. He's old school mafia. He likes to do things the traditional way.
To join the club, you have to agree to pick up a gun and go kill somebody if the leader of the family tells you to do so. And the Bonanno crime family, is one of the most notorious at that game.
Vito Rizzuto and the others from Montreal are loyal to the family, and they're eager to show it. That wish is about to come true. A few months after the wedding, Joe Massino decides to shake up his organization. He believes that 3 of his captains are no longer loyal. He summons Vito Rizzuto and his Canadian crew to New York to help him clean house. They meet at a motel in Brooklyn, the boss in the dirty t-shirt and the shooters from Canada, to plan the ambush. And as far as Rizzuto was concerned, what was his rationale for doing it? What was in it for him?
Oh, this is an honor. I mean, if you're a gangster on the way up or looking to climb up, and your old man is the head of the faction there in Montreal, you're looking to, impress. Once the idea was broached, there was no way that you were going to keep a guy like Vito Rizzuto away from that opportunity.
The ambush will take place at a social club frequented by the Bananos. It's May 8th, 1981. Vito Rizzuto will pull the trigger.
If you're given a contract to kill somebody, you have to do it. You don't turn it down because it's part of being part of the family.
Joe Pistone was a soldier in the Bonanno crime family for 6 years.
Killing is a way of life. Guys kill their, kill their son-in-laws, guys kill their brother-in-laws, guys kill their cousins, and that's what it takes. You have to be totally ruthless and devoid of any feeling that you show for anybody.
This reenactment is from a PBS documentary about the Bonanno family, based on court records and eyewitness testimony. Vito Rizzuto is the man in the ski mask.
They put the rival faction at ease, leading them to believe that the meeting that they were going to attend was in fact just another meeting between rival captains in the family trying to work things out. Inside the closet, Vito Rizzuto is basically the guy with his eyes out. He bursts out first and bullets start flying. And the three captains end up dead.
The bodies are cut up and disposed of. The grisly triple homicide becomes mafia legend, a latter-day St. Valentine's Day massacre.
After the murders, Vito Rizzuto returned to Canada. He certainly was now, in 1981, he was already a significant criminal by virtue of his blood and his birth. But now he's a man who can get the work done. He drives some very, very nice cars. Very little in his own name. Businessman in Toronto wants to lend him a car to use. People want to do nice things for Vito Rizzuto. Not because he will do something bad to them if they don't, but because they think he might do something bad to them if they don't. It's a mythic, perfect criminal organization. When people give you money not to do anything, does it get sweeter than that?
Best lawyer in the country over here.
Like the notorious New York mob boss John Gotti, Vito Rizzuto has swagger. He shows up at the fights in Montreal with his entourage. He likes to see and to be seen.
The whole thing, it's money and power. They get the best service, they get the best seat. Everybody's falling all over. There's the respect, and that's also power.
And Vito Rizzuto has power to burn, from sports betting to loan sharking and drug dealing. There are few rackets in Montreal where Rizzuto doesn't get his cut.
He always gonna have 2-3 bodyguards with him. He always have nice women around him. One of them was his mistress. What a beautiful lady she was. And I would say like kind of Marilyn Monroe. So my job was to go around with her and bring her, let's say, to the bar, bring her to a restaurant, drive her someplace. That's it. As long as nobody is gonna touch her, and she could look at other men and stuff like that. Like she was young. I would say she was 25, 26. Gorgeous, gorgeous. What a fucking babe she was. And it's normal that everybody's gonna look. And she knew too that she was the property of Vito.
And rival gangs in Montreal apparently have a hands-off policy too. In a quarter of a century, no one has dared to take on Vito Rizzuto.
He's the John Gotti of Montreal. He's a flashy guy, proud of his ability to beat the system, and, you know, someone who doesn't run away from the status that he achieved by being a gangster.
We'll tell you the rest of the story of Vito Rizzuto with a surprising twist a little later on. But first, in the Canadian criminal establishment, it's not only organizations run by people of Italian descent who've decided to call Montreal their home. For a century and a half, the Irish of Montreal have enjoyed their music and their legends. And no one is more legendary here than the man known as the Secret Santa.
He's given more to the people than most of our politicians have.
Each December, Secret Santa would appear in some of Montreal's poorest neighborhoods. Not on a sleigh, but an 18-wheeler, piled high with presents.
He'd drive his truck full of gifts with the Smurfs, with the clowns, and whatever he could put on there. He'd give out so many gifts to kids that were waiting on the street for him, knowing that he would be there. I mean, even if it was 3 o'clock in the morning, he'd find where to get a gift.
The secret benefactor also gave hundreds of thousands of dollars to the Catholic Church. There was money for sports teams, hot meals for seniors, a big check for a new drug rehab center.
He was a good guy. He was always there to help. And he didn't want to be known. He didn't want thank you notes. He was just happy that you knew it, and that was it. That was what was important.
This philanthropist was a patriot too, who spent a fortune trying to save Canada during the last Quebec referendum.
There must have been 50 to 75 people working for him. And he was telling us, keep on, we gotta win that thing, we gotta win that thing. And he done a job that I don't see too many Canadians done like him.
But there's something else that must be said about this mystery man. He is also one of the country's biggest gangsters. Leader of Montreal's Irish mob, the West End Gang. His name is Gerald Matticks. The youngest of 14 children, Matticks was raised in the Montreal working-class neighborhood called Point St. Charles, known as the Point.
You can't forget where you come from. If you forget where you come from, you're nothing. I came from that place, and I know how it is. Just all poor people there, mostly poor people. One helped the other one helped the other. If you had no food, well, somebody would give you food. My mother's place, somebody would come in there, she would feed them, or anything. That's the way it was.
He admits he wasn't much for school, quitting in the 7th grade to follow his older brothers into their career of choice, crime.
At first, the Matticks were hired because they were specialized in hijacking trucks that were carrying either booze, cigarettes, TV sets, furniture, all sorts of stuff.
Soon, the Matticks boys got jobs on the Montreal waterfront, which opened exciting new opportunities for smuggling drugs. With his siblings, and then with his son, it became the Matticks family business.
Is it where you grew up? Is it how you grew up?
Well, where I grew up, just the way it was those days, and then it just continues, you know. The way you grew up, that's it. Everybody was the same, and some people went that way, some people went to be cops, some people went to be judges, some people went to be lawyers, and some people go the other way, whatever, you know.
Decades later, the way Gerald Matticks went led him here, to the huge drug seizure in Montreal that got him charged with smuggling 7 shipments of narcotics, with a street value estimated at $2.1 billion. The authorities seized Matticks' farm, houses, vehicles, and hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash, but there was a nagging question. After a 30-year career, where was the rest of it?
And that has always been the problem with the police versus organized crimes. I mean, you can see some buildings, some cars, you can see some Harley Davidsons, but you rarely see the money. So where did the money go? Where's the money? That's a question a lot of police investigators would like to know.
Like any good criminal, Matticks will only say the police got it all.
People do the math, and they come up with a street value of
a couple $100 million in a year, and they say, where is all that money?
Yeah, well, I didn't make that money because I didn't do all those things, you know. And anyway, I want to stop talking about this now because that's my crime life. Let's forget about that now.
Gerry Matticks is now almost 70 years old. He can't get parole until at least 2008. Among all the riches he once had, he insists what he misses most is Secret Santa.
Just something in me. Every year I go there and see the happy kids, you know, see the people are happy.
You ever think that you did that in part to balance the other side of your life?
No, it has nothing to do with my other life. It's just what I wanted to do. Kids didn't know it was Gerry Matticks come with that truck. They said, here comes Santa Claus, that's it. And that's all I wanted them to know, be happy, you know.
Matticks says that in the end, he hopes his good deeds will count against the bad. It certainly seems he has some friends in high places.
You know, there's an old Irish story that's told. This big man who was known in crime tried to get in the front gates of heaven and couldn't get in. Then one day Jesus was walking around heaven and found this guy walking in heaven. And he went to St. Peter and said, how come so-and-so, the robber, is now in heaven? Did you let him in? St. Peter says, I didn't let him in. He says, well, who let him in? They said, ask your mother. She usually lets them in through the back door.
When we return, life in the fast lane.
He's wise, he's strategic, he is a sharp guy. He's nobody's fool.
Race day at the drag strip in Mission, British Columbia. The fastest motorcycle racers in the country are here for the last meet of the season. The biggest nitro-powered bikes take just a few seconds to reach 200 miles an hour. It is not a sport for the faint-hearted. And in his red leathers, with the Hell's Angel symbol on the back, John Bryce is one of the best. But motorcycle drag racing isn't Bryce's only claim to fame. Where does Mr. Bryce stand on your list of priorities?
He's up there. He's up there, yeah.
According to the police, the man in the mask is also president of the Hell's Angels chapter in the East End of Vancouver, reputed to be the wealthiest bikers in the country.
They would describe him as one of the most powerful, influential Hell's Angels on the West Coast, in Canada, indeed. He's looked at as, highly successful, a model for those that are coming into the program to aspire to. He's succeeded, he's got businesses, he's got money.
But it's other activities that have ranked motorcycle gangs, especially the Hell's Angels, as perhaps Canada's greatest threat from organized crime.
A major investigation by the police landed more than 19 members and associates of the Hells Angels, including about a half dozen full-patch, powerful members of John Bryce's own club behind bars. They are facing what is the most serious major gang trial Canada has seen in years. They are charged with cocaine smuggling, extortion, weapons charges, other drugs charges, and being part of a criminal enterprise.
Unlike most criminal organizations, the Hells Angels actively promote and advertise their brand. They live up to their violent reputation, protecting their turf, especially against other gangs. On this night in Reno, they encounter the rival Mongols inside a casino. A surveillance camera captures the chaos as bullets fly, and bikers and casino patrons dive for their lives. When the shooting stops, 3 are dead, 15 wounded. The RCMP says the Hells Angels in BC also routinely protect their business interests by murder.
I think we totaled them up, and I want to be close, but we were looking at about 20 homicides that we suspected of being sponsored by the Hells Angels.
Unsolved homicides at this stage? But somehow, in well over a decade at the top, John Bryce has no criminal record. No mean feat for one of the richest Hells Angels in Canada. Why is he not in jail or in court facing charges?
If your question is why isn't he behind bars? Because we haven't got the evidence to put him behind bars.
There is evidence of Bryce's personal wealth. It's been reported he has at least 3 homes in Vancouver, estimated to be worth over $2 million. He has a motorcycle business. He invests in commercial real estate. And he repeatedly claims he's just a businessman, and that the Hells Angels are merely a group of guys who share the love of big bikes. But recently in Vancouver, a police informant testified about murder assignments he got from some of Bryce's Hells Angels and drug deals in the East End chapter's clubhouse. What's more, Bryce's son pleaded guilty to taking part in those deals. We went looking for John Bryce at the Mission drag strip. Mr. Bryce, sorry to bother you. My name's Bob McKeown. I'm with the CBC. Oh, yeah? Just hear me out. He did give me a few minutes of his time.
What's this where is this going on right now?
Well, you know what? I mean...
CBC.
It's CBC.
You're going to put it on the news.
It's a show called The Fifth Estate. Bryce voiced complaints about a previous Fifth Estate story on the Hells Angels.
You probably know what I'm talking about. There was a cop,
But after all the denials of anything illegal, I wanted to know how he would explain the damning testimony about Hells Angels, drugs, and murder. The question I would want to ask is this. Given the statements that have been made before, in light of the stuff that's been in the newspaper over the past couple of days, how do you put that in context for us?
Well, I don't know. You put it in context. What am I going to say? Whatever I say doesn't mean anything to you guys anyway.
Well, you know.
I don't know. How do I know everything?
Our conversation ended when I told him he was being recorded.
Well, you got a microphone on you, though.
Yeah.
He is a sharp guy. He's nobody's fool. He's wise. He's strategic.
They say it isn't easy to be leader of the pack, and that must be doubly so for a Hells Angels president. But for now, John Bryce remains in the fast lane, still untouched by the law. Some say, daring them to catch him.
For Halifax standards, he was, considered a Mr. Big, and lived the life to match.
Mr. Big from Halifax loved cars. The more expensive, the better. And he especially liked to rub shoulders with the rich and famous on the NASCAR racing circuit.
He played a lifestyle of a bit of a high-end roller. He was a bit of a race car nut. He'd go to watch the races. He spent like he made millions.
When he saw the big, shiny rigs that ferry NASCAR teams from track to track, he had to have one, even with its 6-figure sticker price.
It was a motorhome which was custom built in the United States, probably estimated at $500,000 to $600,000 Canadian.
Behind this no-nonsense exterior is a 5-star hotel suite on wheels. But Mr. Big, whose real name is Paul Arthur, was too busy to go to make the hefty down payment.
He was paid using a bucket of primarily $20 bills, which amounted to $290,000.
So he chartered a Learjet and flew the mobile home dealer to Nova Scotia and paid him a down payment of almost $300,000 with buckets of cash. What do you make of that?
Well, that it was a very lucrative enterprise.
One way or the other, Paul Arthur got his money here, at the Port of Halifax, among the busiest docks in North America for cargo and illegal drugs. Cocaine, heroin, marijuana, hashish, all enter Canada in containers like these. As a crane operator, Arthur's annual salary was about $80,000, but he made millions more brokering drug deals, watching over illegal shipments from the best seat in the house, knowing exactly how and when to avoid customs and police.
They knew where the container of interest was on the ship, They knew where it was going to be placed at the port itself. And of course, being the crane operator, they got to manipulate where that container ended up. So they only needed a window of opportunity of 90 seconds.
But that's only part of a smuggler's work. You've also got to launder the money, find a way to make it look legitimate. For years, Arthur bought and sold vintage automobiles, transforming his dirty drug money into lovingly restored classic cars from the 1950s and 60s.
14, 15, 27, no sir, 65, now 7, 47, I have 65 inches.
As is the case with many drug traffickers, they typically launder their money using a number of means. It was estimated that the cash expenditures alone were something like $2 million, just simply during the course of the investigation.
If spending millions was in the job description, Arthur was the man to do it. His home was a maritime mansion, nicknamed Smuggler's Cove. He had a pool, a multi-car garage, and he had a warehouse for his most prized automotive treasures. He had more than enough of everything to quit. But like everyone else on our list, he didn't.
Even when somebody is involved in criminal activity and they suspect the police are on them, they for some reason can't stop. It becomes almost an obsession or a challenge.
So Mr. Big did just one more deal. The one when the RCMP found $7 million worth of hash at a house outside Halifax. Paul Arthur pleaded guilty to 7 major crimes and was sentenced to 14 years in prison. That was less than 3 years ago, which is why we were a tad surprised to find him here. Morning.
Morning.
Bob McKeown.
How you doing, Bob?
I'm well. Coming out of a halfway house a decade or so before his sentence is due to expire. What's more, though he presumably acknowledged his crimes to the parole board, he insisted to us that he's an innocent man, persecuted by the RCMP. So you're telling me that you lied to the parole board, that you misled them as to how you really felt about all this?
Well, that's possible.
I'm just trying to figure out how you have it both ways, how you get out early saying you're sorry and you did it, and now you're saying you're innocent and you didn't.
Well, I mean, it's all over. I'm doing my time, whether I'm innocent or guilty. I'm still doing my time.
But Paul Arthur still wants it both ways. Remember the job as a crane operator at the Halifax docks that allowed him to smuggle all those drugs and make millions? Well, now he wants it back again. And you'd like to have your job back, I gather.
Oh, I'm going to have my job back.
You're going to get it back?
Yes,
You're confident of that?
Positive.
His $600,000 RV, his mansion, his classic cars are now all gone. But Mr. Big's self-confidence? That's a different story. Any regrets at this point?
No, none whatsoever.
No regrets whatsoever? After the break, some said he might be the richest Newfoundlander ever.
The last deal we did was a couple of $100 million US. The sun never set on our business.
Whether or not he was the richest Newfoundlander ever, he is certainly the most successful international drug dealer ever born and raised on the Rock.
I owned millions of dollars worth of vessels. We had 110 people working around the world. The last deal we did was a couple of $100 million US. The sun never set on our business.
Brian O'Dea is the oldest son of a respected and affluent St. John's family. His father owned a brewery and was elected to Parliament. And when young Brian went off to university, there were high expectations. At least they got the high part right, when O'Dea discovered marijuana.
I started smoking dope one day and somehow fell into the business of it from smoking it just to support a habit.
Thus began a whirlwind career in high-stakes drug trafficking. that would take Brian O'Dea around the world and make him hundreds of millions of dollars. From his startup in the Maritimes, he went south to the Caribbean.
I moved in with some Newfoundlanders who were living in Jamaica who were on the run. We were hustling pot and hash up out of Jamaica into Toronto on Jamaica Airlines, using people who worked on the airlines to get it through. It was something that I was doing for my friends.
Next stop, Bogota, Colombia, the mecca of the cocaine trade, and its subsidiary industries, mayhem and murder. O'Dea spoke almost no Spanish and knew even less about cocaine. All he had was the address of a contact, a drug runner named Benny.
And I told him that Benny told me if I ever got to Colombia that I could come down and maybe get a little coke and he could take care of me.
Benny wasn't there, but his boss was.
So the guy said, well, Benny works for me, and anything that he could do for you, I would do. So I said, okay, well, that'd be great. And he said, what did you have in mind? How much money do you have? And I told him I had $500. He got a great kick out of that. And he said, man, you got big balls. Muy huevones. So he said, but what I'll do is I'll give you 50 grams, and if you come back, then we'll do business.
O'Dea did come back, and his deals got bigger. Eventually, he bought an aging DC-6 to fly drugs from Colombia to the U.S. It seemed like a good investment until the engines conked out over the Caribbean with a payload of 27 tons of marijuana.
The next thing you knew, we hit the water and the pot came crashing up against the bulkhead. So our door was completely pushed. Now, there was no going out the back. So we had to get out the front through the window, which we did. And, you know, it was just a matter now of survival. It was just get out, stay on the plane as long as possible, and then start swimming.
Soon, O'Dea had another idea. This time, he would go north, about as far from Colombia as he could get, to Alaska. Quiet, remote, perfect for drug deals. He bought commercial fishing boats to rendezvous offshore with larger vessels loaded with top-quality marijuana from Southeast Asia. At sea, bags of pot were packed into boxes, hundreds of them. When they arrived back in port, they looked like all the other fishing boats unloading their catch. The crates then were transferred onto trucks. O'Dea owned a trucking company, too, for the 2,000-mile trip to Los Angeles. It was a huge operation. Brian O'Dea personally delivered suitcases of cash to his offshore bank accounts.
Our business was worth hundreds of millions. We did the last deal we did was a couple of $100 million US.
So you had no trepidation about your role in this supply chain and about what the drugs were doing to the lives of the people to whom you were selling them?
No. No. I don't have a moral issue with it. I'm sorry. I know you're probably looking for that, or someone's looking for it, but I don't have a moral issue with it at all.
As for all his millions, O'Dea says he spent a lot, gave a lot away, and squandered the rest on his own products. Whatever his moral position on drugs, he finally understood that cocaine was killing him.
I had a moment of clarity when I was out. And it was as though I was given a choice of living or dying, and the choice was entirely mine. And were I to choose living, it came with only one condition. I had to do everything differently.
But it was about the same time that a disgruntled employee went to the police, and O'Dea was sentenced to 10 years in a U.S. federal prison. He was transferred back to Canada, then paroled in 1995. Needing a fresh start, he decided to meet his past head-on, placing a job wanted ad in the National Post, touting his unique qualifications.
It was headlined former marijuana smuggler, and then it went on to say that I just completed a 10-year sentence incident-free for smuggling 75 tons of pot into the U.S. And it listed some of the attributes that I had learned.
Among his references, the district attorney who convicted him. Today, Brian O'Dea is employed as a television producer in Toronto. Earlier in the Fifth Estate, we told you the story of Vito Rizzuto, who's ruled the Montreal underworld for almost 25 years.
Vito Rizzuto, he see things coming. He's got lots of power in Quebec. And politics, cops, judge, he's got power everywhere. The paradise for any crook around the world, it's Quebec. You can buy everything. Tell me the price, you're gonna get it. And that's including minister, law, justice, anything.
In fact, for decades, the best the Canadian authorities could do was to get Vito Rizzuto to agree to settle a tax case. Then, 2 years ago, something happened that even Rizzuto didn't see coming. He was arrested at his home on Mafia Row in Montreal and charged by the U.S. Department of Justice in the murders of the 3 Bonanno family captains back in 1981. This past summer, he lost his fight against extradition and was put on a flight to the U.S. If convicted, he may well spend the rest of his life in an American prison.
In the world of organized crime, you never know from one day to the next who your friends are and who's going to be out there with a gun and putting 2 behind your ear. The higher you get in the mob, the bigger the bullseye circle becomes on your chest.
If Vito Rizzuto is found guilty, it will be because of one of the greatest law enforcement operations ever. In the mid-1970s, the FBI managed to insert one of its own agents inside the Bonanno crime family. Someone who gained the trust of some of the most cunning and murderous men in America, something never done before or since.
Well, the reason it's so difficult to infiltrate the American Mafia is because you have to have known somebody. Everybody knows somebody. You know, everybody has a cousin, everybody has a friend. You have to have grown up in one of the neighborhoods. You have to have somebody, as they say, vouch for you.
Our Mafia expert Joe Pistone should know. He was the FBI agent who spent 6 perilous years as a Bonanno soldier. That's him on the right in his undercover identity, Donnie Brasco. Pistone's story was told in a major Hollywood movie.
Okay, when I introduce you, I'm gonna say, this is a friend of mine. That means you're a connected guy. Now, if I said instead, this is a friend of ours, that would mean you were a made guy. A capiche?
Yeah, friend of mine, friend of ours. Yeah. What do I call you, friend of ours? Or?
Keep your fucking mouth shut about me. Don't say, hey, Don.
Johnny Depp plays the title role of Donnie Brasco. Al Pacino is his mafia mentor.
Some things I gotta take.
Yeah. What do you want, 100?
Yeah, what are you doing? What are you doing? Wise guy don't carry his money in a wallet. Hey, wise guy carries money in a roll, like this. See? Bina on the outside. Like that, come on.
What Pistone did and the way he was able to do it for so many years is certainly, it was huge, and it was an incredible event, a credible undertaking by him.
And the repercussions of that landmark FBI operation are felt in gangland to this day. Though the mob put a price on Pistone's head, it didn't stop him from testifying in more than 100 criminal trials. Bit by bit, the Mafia's code of silence crumbled and the dominoes started to fall. When Vito Rizzuto goes to trial for the 1981 murders, a star witness against him may be the man who ordered him to pull the trigger, former Bonanno family boss, Joe Massino.
Well, I always said there's no honor amongst thieves, and that proves it out there.
Found guilty of murder himself, even Massino, the one-time boss of bosses, began to talk.
You know, here he gets convicted. He's facing a death penalty, facing a loss of $10 million or so in a civil suit, and the first thing he does is he goes to the authorities and says, I'll do A, B, and C, you know, if you cut me a break, cut me the death penalty.
Joe Pistone says there are really only 2 motivating factors in organized crime: violence and money. The movie about Pistone's 6 years of living dangerously may be remembered most for this one scene of art imitating life: the murder of the 3 Bonanno captains in 1981.
Jesus, oh no!
25 years later, Vito Rizzuto stands accused of the crime, and a Hollywood ending doesn't seem likely, with at least 3 mafia turncoats set to testify against him. But those who know say don't count out Canada's Teflon Don quite yet.
There's nothing stupid about Vito Rizzuto. He's caught almost by accident through the stupidity of people in the United States, all of the informants within the Bonanno family. They can't get him on the murders that he's charged with doing simply because you need evidence. And it appears to be the only evidence that they have is the rats, who are all shooters themselves pretty much, and a photograph of him leaving town the next day. I mean, he was smart in 1981, and he's real smart now.
But if Rizzuto isn't smart enough to remain the godfather of Montreal from a prison cell in New York, this may be the end of one of the most profitable reigns in Canadian criminal history. And if so, who's next?
I'm still impressed for the mystery around that man. But I think now he's gone. The Rizzuto reign is past now. Now it's somebody else gonna run the show. Who? I don't know. It's been too long that I'm not no more in that business. But they'll find someone.